Hey, everybody, welcome back to your Dawn of Autonomy podcast. I'm Dawn Zoldi, your host and the CEO of P3 Tech Consulting. We are in a month that we've dedicated to this theme of dual use. This month is sponsored by Fixar. And if you missed the episode with Chris Corgnati at the beginning of the month, check that out. Fixar is doing so many great things. Today, though, we have with us Seahorse Air, and Anurag Gupta is the CEO and founder of this company. They are creating a trifibian, yes, you heard it right, a trifibian aircraft. And we're going to talk about that today. So excited to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So, fun fact, everybody, I actually met Anurag at Amsterdam Drone Week. This was back in March, I believe. And so much has happened since then. So before we talk about your company, Anurag, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm an architect by education, and I have started this particular uh, project about the drone about 2.5 years ago after I have sold off a earlier business that I was running, which was in the domain of micro banking. I couldn't go back to that business because of a non-compete, but I could do anything else. And this is what caught my fancy. And it's been a meandering sort of a journey, but this is where we have reached now.
Well, I love that. And what inspired you to want to create this trifibian aircraft?
We have tried to figure out what is the problem because of which so many major players are not yet able to go commercial. And one of those problems is to do with certification of these drones as an airplane because they fly at a height which makes it unsafe, as unsafe as any airplane is. So we are trying to do something a little bit different and fly them very low. If we fly them low, we can only fly them over water. So it's a series of decisions taken around the issue of how would we get our craft certified so that we can get into a commercial operation quickly. So we are now flying it at just 30 feet above water, where even if we just fall down in a free fall, people won't get killed. So the safety requirements are not quite like those of an aircraft or a airplane.
Well,
And
Anurag, a picture paints a thousand words, and I know we've got a really cool video. So let's go ahead and roll that. All right, I think it's coming up in 1 second, and as we get this kind of set, you know it's live when things are getting screwed up. Okay, here we go. What are we looking at here, Anurag?
so this is what I'm talking about, that we fly extremely low at just 30 feet height above sea, over water only. We will never fly over land. And our safety requirements are therefore like those of a car or a boat. We don't have to be considered as a plane. So this is more like maritime air mobility. We are in the air, but only over sea, never over land.
And we're looking
So
at the inside of what the aircraft is going to look like.
So this is to fly 5 people across fairly long distances. We can do 450 kilometers with this. Distances over sea would be obviously much larger than the general use case for air taxis, which would be from an airport to downtown. Here we are looking at a few hundred kilometers. So we have floats, we have huge floats, and this is a very unwieldy shape or a form factor for high speed. We cannot go at the kind of speeds that many air taxis can go because we have these massive floats which allow it to land on water.
Okay, and you've got this cool tilt rotor. So we're gonna break this down and get into this in great detail. But let's talk a little bit about you know what you're doing, and you kind of coined this term maritime air mobility. And when you look at the aircraft that are flying over water right now, it's primarily these seaplanes.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about seaplanes and how your aircraft is different from those.
The seaplanes, when you talk about seaplanes, you talk about Maldives, because Maldives is the world's largest user of seaplanes by a long, long margin. They have a country that is just 500,000 population. They have about 91 seaplanes that take people from the capital city to resorts. And these seaplanes can take off from water and land on water, but they have issues. They cannot land or take off from regular water on the sea because that is too choppy. Even if the waves are more than 8 inches, it severely impacts those seaplanes. So they have to build calm pools of water, which are about 3/4 of a kilometer long, on which the plane has to create a runway to take off and to land at the other end. So there's a lot of infrastructure needed, and these are large planes comparatively. They are 14 to 15 people. So ours is a micro seaplane. It's a micro seaplane that is also an eVTOL, so we require no infrastructure at all at either point, neither at the takeoff point nor at the landing point, because we can land on the beach. From the beach, we will never go towards land, but we will always go towards water. But we can land on the beach, and therefore that makes it a very convenient product as far as infrastructure is concerned.
Okay, very good. So when we talk about trifibian and now you're talking about infrastructure, basically you can take off and land from almost anywhere.
Yeah,
And so that means from the water, that means from land.
yeah.
Uh, so um, so very, very interesting. I imagine seaplanes have kind of an infrastructure and an ecosystem around them that will not be necessary with your, as you're referring to it, micro seaplane, the Seahorse uh, H5, right?
Right. And a place like Maldives is using so many seaplanes which have a capability of going maybe 1,500 kilometers and at a fairly high speed, but they don't use that capability. The seaplanes don't really go more than about 400, 450 kilometers as the longest distance within Maldives. So it's a bit of a waste of capability. And they're, as a result, very expensive. We would be maybe one-tenth the price of one of those. So we are a much more bite-sized infrastructure to deploy. Uh, for instance, we're not looking at competing with the current seaplanes or their service. That is already well established, and it is uh, very heavily used and very badly needed service within Maldives. We don't see any reason to try and interfere with that. We're looking at other use cases within Maldives, but we intend to run a micro airline, a seafaring airline, once we start manufacturing these in numbers.
Okay, well, very. Let's talk about the different use cases that you're focused on. If you're not competing with the seaplanes and you're looking at the Maldives in particular, before we get to the use cases, let's talk a little bit about the Maldives because I know this is a place that you're really targeting initially for the launch of these vehicles, likely next year. So tell us a little bit about the structure of the Maldives. It's very unique.
Completely unique. This is a one-off kind of a place in the world, which is it's a volcanic formation. It is the lowest. I don't know if people know that Maldives is the lowest lying country in the world, and it will be the first country to go under once the water levels start rising. So
Yikes.
they don't see more than 12 years of existence as a country if the water levels keep rising like they are doing. It's really really low lying. Once you go to some of those resorts, you realize how low the land below the water is. It's just there. It's just 2 feet, 3 feet below, next to the resort beach. Uh, so we are looking at operating an air ambulance here first. The Maldives topology is comprised of atolls. So atolls are small islands that crop up because of volcanic activity around a large body of water between those islands, and the distances can be fairly large. And their policy is to have one major resort in one island, so they don't have multiple resorts in an island. So some of the resorts are really really large, like there are 400 500 bed resorts
Wow.
in those places. And we are looking at operating in this for three things. The biggest focus immediately is on an air ambulance because they badly need. Uh, there are about 40,000 rooms, and they are very high-end rooms, and there are a lot of people who stay there at any given time. And if somebody has a heart problem and needs an evacuation to a hospital, they have a nightmare of a time because they only have ferries or boats available to do that. And over a distance like 300 kilometers, it can take 12 to 15 hours to just complete that boat ride to reach a
Well,
hospital.
I mean, that's life and death right there. I mean, if you have someone in cardiac arrest, they can't wait 15 hours to get to the hospital, right?
Right. Right. So we are going to, as a first, the first thing we will deploy in Maldives is 26 of our planes, in one in every atoll, co-located with the hospital in that atoll. And we will never be more than 20 minutes away from an emergency call from any resort in Maldives once we deploy one in every atoll. And this would be available to resorts, to general public, to anyone. And this would be available 24 by 7, co-located, as I said, with the hospital. So the plane would be parked inside the hospital, and we will train nurses and doctors to work with us. And this would be fitted with advanced life support systems. It can wheel in a stretcher. It can carry a doctor and a nurse along with the patient. And it can, as I said, go up to 450 kilometers. So from the furthest resort, we can go to a specialty hospital in Malé, which is the capital city, if that is needed. But most cases would be solved by going to a nearby hospital first, which may
Okay.
not be the most well-equipped one, but emergencies require quicker response rather than very specialized response.
They
And
do. And we're already getting questions from the audience. We've got a super fan out there. Mark Ganongi is from the Nevada test site here in the United States. And so I want to talk a little bit about this very unique design. We talked about the floats, Anurag. I want to really kind of break down what makes this vehicle super unique. So let's talk first about the triple propulsion system that you all included in this Seahorse S5.
so this is a pretty heavy drone. This is a two-tonner. This is 2,000 kilograms of takeoff weight. Uh, and we are very efficient when it comes to the weight ratio versus the rest of the weight. We are much more efficient than if you draw a comparison between regular air taxi like a Joby or an Archer or any of those. We would be more than two times more efficient in terms of the weight we can carry for the total weight of the craft because of the propulsion system that we are using, because it has a much higher energy density. We are using petrol, we are not using batteries. So our drone has no batteries to charge. There is only petrol to fill, and you go ahead after filling petrol.
And
So the
and just
three
to be clear, this vehicle will have a pilot on board.
Yes.
Is that right?
The pilot would be required for comfort of passengers, otherwise they'll freak out if they are told that there is nobody here. This is more for psychological comfort than anything else. We don't really need a pilot. We can put it on autopilot and have it autonomous, but a human being is needed to give comfort to the other passengers.
That
So
is
this
so
would
interesting.
always be piloted.
Got it.
And also, because we are going to fly very low over water, we will sometimes encounter obstacles like another boat, which we have to go around. Uh, Otherwise, we have to fly much higher. We have to fly more like 150 meters to avoid those obstacles. And then we become like any other plane in terms of the risk of death or injury if the plane falls down for any reason.
Well, speaking of flying low, this is the question from Mark in the audience. He's saying, you are flying so low and over the water. Why did you choose a multi-rotor over a ground effect uh, type vehicle for advanced air mobility?
A ground effect vehicle would be huge. We are like a mosquito compared to an Airfish 8. You really, if you put our drone fully built next to a Airfish 8, we are really, really tiny. It would be about 40 times larger than this. You can't put that big of vehicle on in resorts and in tiny places. And the Airfish doesn't land on water, doesn't land on land. It only operates on water. It takes off and lands only on water. So it still requires a lot of infrastructure. It's not an eVTOL. It's not a VTOL. It needs a runway to. So it doesn't work as a use case for us.
And then, so hence the why you have the multi rotors. Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit
So
about those because
so
they're interesting, especially in that video we saw how they tilted.
so we have started using a propulsion system developed and patented by Flowcopter, and we are using the largest system they have built as yet. Uh, Over a period of time, we are working with them to build larger systems, which would have a bigger engine, more power. But at the moment, what they have is what we are using. And for the kind of weight that we need to carry, three is an optimal number because we have to account for one engine failure as well. If one engine fails, we still want to keep going or be able to land safely. So the required power has to come from two engines. The third one is more there for redundancy. Uh, with one engine, we cannot pull the weight. With two engines, we can. But if one fails, then it'll fall down. So with three engines, it works. Mathematically, that is the minimum that we need. Once we have bigger systems, the Flowcopter's own propulsion system is very large. It can take each of their systems is 200 kilowatts. We are not able to give it even half of that through one of the engines that we are using because they have not yet built the coupling and the required interface for larger engines. And larger engines are not so commonplace either. They're coming up now, so we will have something in maybe a year and a half, which may be able to work with two engines rather than three. And we may have maybe a little bit of auxiliary battery power to handle any situation that is an emergency where you need a little more power. So
Well,
that's in the future. We are right now happy with keeping it simple, and this is tested over a year and a half. It's very stable as a system. So we don't have in the current configuration, we don't have any technical challenges at all. It's a system that is working already for more than a year and a half, has done a lot of flying. The system has done hover about 6 feet above ground for over an hour, which probably is a record for any such system.
oh wow, that's amazing. So let's talk. You mentioned some of the safety features, and I really want to foot stomp this because you're talking about, I believe, an experimental certification in the Maldives, um, and it doesn't matter what civil aviation authority you're talking to. Everybody's concerned about safety. What have you built into this design to ensure that the vehicle is safe?
The first thing is what we have not built into the vehicle, but it's a business rule that we will not fly high. That
Okay.
if we are carrying people in this, we will not fly more than 30 to 50 feet above water. If we are not carrying people, there may be situations where we may send the plane at night from the resort to Malé to pick up some cargo. That could be an autonomous journey. So that we can do at a 200-meter height where we would not encounter any obstacles. But if we are carrying people, we will never fly more than 30 to 50 feet above water. The largest safety requirement that we have met is because of the redundancy of an engine. So if one of the propulsion system fails, then we should still keep going. And the three systems are not connected to each other in any other way except through the flight control. So they're not linked in any other way. Uh, then we have an airbag with each seat. Then we have isolated the cabin where the passengers sit in a way that if it falls in any position, it will not, the cabin will never collide with water or wherever it is falling. It is either the rotors or the floats that will hit that thing first. And those are designed to break. These like crumple zones of cars. And
Okay.
therefore, the fuselage would still be safe. And the fuselage is also designed in a way that it would be airtight and it would float on water if it lands on even the choppiest of waters. So we would not lose lives here if we crash down on water.
Okay, I mean, that's significant. You also you talked about the fuselage. It's resilient, it's weather resistant. I'm going to use that term.
We're
Uh,
using carbon fiber, so it's carbon fiber is pretty hardy material. It, and the propulsion system that we are using is basically hydraulics. We're using a hydraulic system, which is used in really mucky conditions like earth movers and excavators. So it can operate in really difficult environment conditions.
okay, well, because over the water, there's water oftentimes has its own weather events, right? It kind of generates its own weather patterns, which makes it really unique.
Maldives is a very benign place as far as weather is concerned. There are never very strong winds there. It's also the temperature variations are stunningly low. On an average day, the temperature variation in Maldives from the highest to the lowest temperature is just 2 degrees
Wow.
to 2 degrees centigrade. So it's like 29 degrees centigrade to 27 degrees centigrade would be a typical day's minimum and maximum temperatures.
Yeah, here we've got a picture. I mean, this place is beautiful. Honestly, it wasn't really on my scope on rugs till I started talking to you. And I know some of these rooms go for like 2,000, 3,000 US dollars a
Yeah,
night. But I'm like, I'm saving up my pennies because this place looks amazing. So I love that you found this really unique niche, as they say. They say niches make riches. And you found this really unique place that has this need for kind of short water type hops, especially in emergency situations. But what I also love about your vehicle is not just the safety and the kind of the resiliency you've built into this design, and also by principle how you plan to operate it, but also you kind of made it luxurious and comfortable. So tell us a little bit about how you also considered the passenger needs and comfort in thinking through how you were going to create this aircraft.
well, this is a very small plane, but a person who's 5 feet 7 inches can stand straight in the cabin, which is not
Really?
something that yes they can't in a normal seaplane. This is the person will be able to stand straight. If it's a 6 foot person, they'll have to bend a little bit. The seats are very comfortable. There's a lot of leg room because we have only 5 seats, including the pilot. So we can afford to spread out the seats a bit. A big deal is how much baggage you carry for people. When people come for a holiday like this, they bring bags, they bring clothes and things, and
Yeah,
you
like this
can't tell
picture
them.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't say to them that you can't bring so many bags or there is a limit to what you can bring. So we have kept an allowance for about 35 to 45 kgs of baggage for each passenger. One large baggage, one trolley, one handbag. We will have all of them. That's why otherwise we could have fitted 2 more seats maybe. But and if there is more bags and if the weight is adding up, so we will be weighing passengers and their baggage together when they so that we know that we are not tipping over our rated MTOW. And if the weight goes beyond a point, we would maybe not have a fifth, fourth passenger at all. We would just take one passenger less.
Okay. Very, very interesting. I
And we have
always
we have a toilet inside.
Yeah,
So
I was
this
going to
is
highlight that because, as I see some of these other vehicles, for urban air mobility or UAM, and we all kind of know the usual suspects. I'm not going to name names. I haven't heard anything about a toilet. Nobody's really talking about luggage. And I always thought about that because, some of the use cases these companies are proposing are like, hey, we'll take you from, the Liberty Airport at Newark right to downtown Manhattan or vice versa to get on that flight, right? You've got big airlines, for example, investing in some of these companies. And um, I think it is important to have some of these things, especially so the toilet's important for what you're trying to achieve also because how long like of a distance in terms of distance and time can one of these hops be on the Seahorse H5?
3 hours. So we can go 3 hours at 150 kilometers an hour. For that, we will have to reduce a passenger because the fuel carried would be more, but there would be such cases that will come where one less passenger but a longer distance is needed. Uh, so we need a toilet on board for 3 hours. For a 3 hour flight, definitely a toilet would be necessary. So
Yeah,
we will not be able to allow the toilet to be used during the flight. When it is flying, it'll create a lot of instability in such a tiny plane to have somebody walk to the back to use the toilet. So we will always land on water for people. So if somebody wants to go to a toilet, it's a mini emergency. They have to tell the pilot, and he would land. It takes about 10 seconds to land, and then they would take off again.
Okay. I would think it's almost like, when you're on the bus, you pull the little the cord like, hey, I need to get off. Really interesting. I didn't think about that either, but man, you've obviously thought all of this through. So, there's I know you're using petrol initially, but there's still a sustainability aspect to your design. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, if we use these planes in India, we will use biofuels. 100% we would use biofuels. It is fully certified to use ethanol. And ethanol is extremely good as an option. It is a net zero fuel. But in Maldives, there is no ethanol. There is only petrol. In India,
Ah, okay.
ethanol is everywhere and very cheap. It's half the price of petrol. Other
All
than
right.
being environment friendly, it is also a much cheaper fuel to run on.
All right. Very good. And, just to kind of give people the direct comparison, we're talking about trips that otherwise, would require a ferry on the water. Uh, how, in terms of time, how much time would taking the Seahorse H5 cut down when compared to a ferry?
A typical ferry would go between 18 to 22 kilometers, let's say 20 kilometers an hour on an average. So a 300-kilometer journey would require about 12 hours minimum, but it could be more like 12 to 14 hours. We should be able to do that in 2 hours.
Wow.
And that's the real use case because 300 kilometers is a typical journey that we are looking at here.
Yeah, I mean that's significant being on a ferry for like 14 hours or just being on the H5 for 2. Especially if you're, on emergency that's definitely critical, right? But also just on your vacation, who wants to spend like more than half of like all of your waking hours basically on a ferry to get somewhere? I was in Greece with my husband last year, and they have these thing called sea jets. Really cool, but every time you do these things, it takes a big chunk of your day. So that's one day of your vacation that, like, well, that's my transport day.
Right.
So to be able to give people that time back, especially in a place like the Maldives, where people are, wanting to enjoy that beautiful blue water we saw, that's really significant. So you're talking about the Maldives, Anurag. You're talking about all of these things you built into the design of this incredible, basically flying yacht. I guess my question is, what's your timeline in terms of, you already said you've had like a year and a half, you've had many successful flights, you've demonstrated this vehicle. When do you think it's actually going to be flying and maybe even carrying passengers?
Well, Flowcopter has been flying their single engine, four rotor drone for over a year and a half. And we had a 2 month stint at the Hans Christian Andersen Airport in Denmark for demonstrations. And they've just got permissions to fly in Scotland from next week. So that will start happening. Uh, we are not changing anything. We are using three of those propulsion systems. For one of this, just building a body around it and avionics system around it. We expect, we have already procured everything for the first prototype that will go to Maldives. All the three engines are there, and right now, Flowcopter is in the middle of assembling all the floats with all the engines, fuel tanks, the hydraulic pumps, etc. And by mid-November, we expect that the Ironbird configuration to be completed, tested, and by early December, we would be ready to ship it to Maldives.
Oh,
Uh,
excellent.
but that would not be that would be without a body. So the carbon fiber body part still have to come after that, and we would expect that to be ready by June of next year. So we expect to show demonstrations to the government in Maldives in June next year, and after that we will take about 6 months of time to set up an assembly plant there so that we can manufacture these. We will begin with making 15 first, and then we would plan to make 200 of them for use in Maldives.
So when it comes to the vehicle that your target is assembling, having one ready to go by June of next year, is this the aircraft then, Anurag, that you're going to work with the Civil Aviation Authority in the Maldives to get some kind of a certification?
Not the Civil Aviation Authority, but the Maritime Authority.
So tell me about that. So that's really interesting. You're in
So
terms
we
of
will
who
be
is certifying this.
this would be registered as a boat in Maldives. Under the boats are registered with the Maritime Authority, and we are working with them to define the specs of this boat, which includes its ability to fly at, let's say, heights like 30 to 50 feet. It's a certification that is not an international certification. It's a domestic certification. We're not looking for a international certification. We're looking for a approval of the government of Maldives, the Maritime Department. And once we have it registered in Maldives under the Maldives flag, then in international waters, those rules hold good. That's the rule about boats, that when you are in the high seas or international waters, then there are no international laws of any country that apply there. The laws of the country where your boat is registered, those apply there. When we are in a country's waters, when we are within 14 nautical miles, let's say of Thailand, then Thailand's rules will apply. But there we can be a boat, so we don't have to fly within those 14 nautical miles. But outside of that, we can fly because we are permitted by our national flag rules. These are things that we are still working our way through, but that's the general principle.
Yeah, that is very interesting. I'm not an expert by any means on the law of the sea. At our Law Tech Connect workshop every year, we tend to have some kind of a maritime panel with attorneys, either from the United States Navy or prestigious law firms that have that background. Really, really interesting. I remember Anurag, our very first year. We got a question about something like this. What if it's a boat that flies? And what are those ones called, Anurag? The ones you and I talked about in Singapore? The hydrofoils.
Hydrofoils, yeah.
Yeah, we got a question about a hydrofoil, and it kind of stumped some of the people in that panel because not something. It's so unique, and it's not something that everybody's thinking about. But I love that you're breaking all kinds of barriers here in terms of your triphibian design and the regulatory schema that will apply to this super unique vehicle. So yeah, I can't wait to follow what you're doing and continue learning more as this year closes out, and then certainly into next year. But you had an opportunity to visit the Air Service World Congress this past July in the Maldives, meet with people and kind of introduce this concept. I take it that people were very welcoming and excited about what you're doing. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
So we met airport authorities from many countries. people who care about how flying would happen in their countries. And many of these countries have a large maritime space. So, say Croatia, we met people from Croatia, from Finland, from South Africa, uh, several other places who have many islands, a lot of tourists, and they have this problem of taking people across a distance on water. None of them have seaplanes. Seaplanes are just very, very difficult to deploy because of the infrastructure that needs to be made for them, and they're very expensive as well. So we have an invitation from at least three countries to come as soon as we have a thing in Maldives. So they don't think there'll be any challenge to get permissions there to do this. But we have to start in one place and get it going
Yeah.
as an example.
I love that. And had I been in, had the H5 been around when I was in Greece, I absolutely would have hopped on it. Even in the United States, I was up in Alaska last year. We have a really great Alaska Center for UAS integration, the Aquasi folks up there. And Alaska is one of those places with little islands and remote places. Hawaii, of course, is another place in the U.S. So my head's spinning on all the different possibilities. Now we focused on kind of the air ambulance, which is such an important use case. We talked about this kind of cargo, and cargo and logistical delivery use case. We talked a little bit about obviously ferrying passengers. But one thing we really didn't talk about, Anurag, was this is dual use month, and as being a former United States Air Force member, search and rescue or personnel recovery could be a really great use case, especially in posts or military locations along the coast. So tell us a little bit about search and rescue or personnel recovery when you're thinking about some of these other use cases that the H5 can be used for.
You can see some pictures where the search and rescue is being demonstrated for this. So I think this is the ideal vehicle for search and rescue because it can land on water. It can actually land and carry a stretcher in. It can take the patient inside the vehicle. It can assist the patient in recovery immediately. Uh, it's not like an helicopter, which has to be quite a bit higher. Can go fast from there to the hospital.
Yeah,
I,
I don't have personal experience. Praise the Lord that I never to be rescued from an ocean. But you're right. Just the videos I've seen of, for example, United States Coast Guard. They've got this pilot hanging out of the side of the thing. They've got a ladder or some kind of thing coming down. The
you don't need
waves are
that.
crashing. I mean, to be able to like land on the water and have that kind of a rescue, I think is really great, because that distance between the water and that aircraft or the helicopter that's pretty high up can be
Also,
pretty scary.
I think the very important criterion for search and rescue is stamina as well. How long can you keep searching? And we can keep going for 3 hours. That's a very, very important aspect as well.
Yeah, that's actually a great point, actually. So, very, very good. So we've only got, I knew our time would fly because this is such an interesting vehicle. Everybody, when I met Anurag and his teammates in Amsterdam, they just had a little like model of this aircraft. They had the display and everything, and I went up, and it was just so intriguing because it was unlike anything else there, and frankly, unlike anything else I'd ever seen. And so, just to kind of recap, Anurag, as we get ready to close out 2024, and you look ahead to 2025, walk us through some of the milestones that you expect to hit along the way with your company.
We are hoping to complete our prototype by another, say, 7 to 8 months. Have preliminary approval from the government to build 15 planes and use them in a non-commercial way first. That's what we are negotiating with the government, that we would first use them. We will build 15 planes at our cost and use them for all of these services like air ambulance, air cargo, joy rides maybe, but not charge anybody anything for them until we have clocked a reasonable number of hours of flights without an incident. And let's say something like a minimum of 3,000 to 10,000 hours is clocked, then we would get an upgraded approval to start charging for these services so that we can go on a commercial basis and also start doing passenger ferrying for short distances, short hauls like 100 kilometers. And then we make 200 planes. We deploy, our intention is to deploy one plane in every major resort in Maldives, to brand it with that resort and make it available as a 24 by 7 uh, asset to that resort, which it can be used even as an air ambulance in an emergency, but it will be used for joy rides, for passenger transfers, for delivery of cargo, uh, and for anything else that they think it can be used for. They need this. We have talked to about 8 resorts, and none of them have the slightest reason to say no to this. And they don't pay for this. It is an asset that we have, and they get it for no capital cost. And when it is actually used, then there is a transfer pricing to the resort, and they decide what they charge to the actual customers, because the commercial relation with the customer is not ours, it's that of the resort. We will provide them trained pilots at our cost and build all of that into the transfer pricing.
Okay. Well, wow. Such a novel aircraft or boat or kind of trifibian, vehicle. We're creating a new category here: maritime air mobility, flying yachts. Really, really interesting, Anurag. And so for the folks out there, as we close out this show, if what are you looking for in terms of partners, investors, and how can people reach you if they want to join up and learn more also about Seahorse Air?
We are not uh, far from the process of raising investment that we would start in a few months. Right now, it's internally funded entirely. Uh, we don't need so much money right now because we are making one prototype. But when we start making 15 planes, we would need to raise money for that. But for that, we will have a lot more going for us. We would have an approval from the government, and we would have the first prototype already there. So it's at that stage that we would expect to raise external funds. Right now, it's internally funded.
All right, very good. Well, how do people learn more and how can they reach you if they want to inquire?
On our website, seahorseair.com, you would find our contacts.
All right, very good, very good. All right, we've got like 1 minute left, so I'll cede the floor to you, Anurag, to close us out.
Uh, we are hoping to go and fly real people by the end of next year. That's what our expectation is. We may be delayed by a few months. It depends on so many other circumstances that we are not necessarily in control of. But technology is not one of those issues we have. Tech is very sorted.
All right. Well, stay tuned, everybody. Keep your eyes peeled for Seahorse Air. I can't wait to see this vehicle and to watch it fly. Anurag, thank you so much for taking this time to talk to us. And so many applications, whether on the commercial side, and I hope the military folks are out there listening because, and your wheels are turning because this is something unlike anything I've ever seen on either side of the house, quite frankly. So thank you again so much,
Thank you. Thank you so
everybody.
much.
Yes, and thank you, everybody out there, and Mark, for your questions. We are out here.